didn't. So we were having all the physical meeting, one-on-one meeting, knowledge sharing, breakfast, lunch, evening, then cocktail dinner kind of meeting, overnight also outdoor meeting as well. Obviously in COVID season, we started with all the virtual meeting over Zoom and all. And it will go on, I'm sure, for next 6 months to 9 months. We don't see anything being stopped, or hotel event will start. So this is all about HRShaper, and you can obviously just type HRShaper in Google, so you will see a lot of photos of many gathering. Let me go to the next one. So this is what we have today. Scott, who agreed and accepted to share the insight on leadership assessment.
Ashish, Scott has come.
Okay, he has come. Yes. Thanks, Scott. We are just, sharing the schedule, how it is going to be for next 60 minutes. So thanks, Scott, for, accepting our invite. And this is directly coming from, the respected and reputed assessment tool company, Hogan Assessment. Most of the organization do use for the leadership assessment and all. So this is one. Let me share another interesting thing. This is about our upcoming event. So we are going to have a next event on 1st August, and our speaker is Captain Raghuraman. Co-host will be RK along with myself, and registration link will be shared in the chat box, so you can register. This is going to happen on Saturday, 1st August. If Mehul has joined RK, we can take Mehul, and then also about the SHRM, I will post information in chat box. SHRM India event is happening on 29th and 30th July. If you are looking for a good discount up to 15%, please contact me. I will arrange the discount. And this is 2 days. They are going to have 4 conclave. Conclave is broken up into half day. So 4 conclave. You can go for a 1 conclave, 2 conclave, or 3 or 4. Maximum price is around 11,000. Minimum is around 5,000. On this, I will be able to arrange around 15% discount. So you can mail me. I will share my email ID in case you are looking for this to join. Okay, let's have a Mehul now.
Yeah, Mehul is there.
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you, RK, for the opportunity. Good evening, friends. And it is always a pleasure to be part of what Ashish does and what RK does. I am also here to share with you that Grey Cells is celebrating Silver Jubilee this month. On 1st June, we completed 25 glorious years of Grey Cells, serving about 1,500 clients across the globe and delivering about 1 lakh man-days of training and many other activities. To celebrate this Silver Jubilee, we are organizing tomorrow an international global HR conference, which starts at 10 in the morning and winds up by 5 in the evening. Since we are celebrating, participation is completely complimentary. Please be our guest. In the chat box, I will share the link to connect. Tomorrow, we are going to have approximately 35 speakers from all across the world, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Middle East, from UK, USA, Africa, and many more countries, even countries around us like Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, and all. And they are from 25 different countries, which will be there. We will have approximately 20 mini sessions of 15-20 minutes each, and the theme of the conference is enhancing ability, agility. That is what we are doing for organizational success. Please do join us, and thank you, Dr. Rao, for congratulating me. I can see that it means a lot to us when you write this to us. Please join us tomorrow, Dr. Rao. It will be a pleasure to have you with us. Ashish, I think I should not take more time. People would be waiting for the other speakers. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Signing off, this is Mehul Kuwadia from Grey Cells, Mumbai. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul. So congratulations once again. I'm proud to share that Grey Cells was my second employer, and so I have a great memory. Thanks, Mehul, for a wonderful journey. Scott, we are just taking 1 or 2 minutes, then we will hand over to you.
Very good.
Okay, let me hand over to you now for your introduction, and then we'll start with the Scott session without spending much time now.
Okay.
RK, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I did. So good evening, everybody. Great to be, as Ashish said, to be a host for the evening along with Ashish for 500 odd people who have already joined in or close to joining in. And also a great honor and pleasure to be in the audience for Scott. And Scott has over decades of experience in the science of personality, and has been actually been one of the first few employees of Hogan Assessment Systems who joined Mr. Hogan, and has a repertoire of work behind him. We've been using Hogan Assessments, and we did a little chat with your participants over the number of years, and have found it to be extremely useful and a pretty strong tool. And it will be great to hear from you in terms of the entire science of assessment of personality and of leadership. With this, I would like to invite Scott to come and address us. And all over to you, Scott.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me share my screen. And bear with me one moment. Okay, how's that? Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
Okay, let me try this again. For some reason, I'm having a little Skype issue today. Okay, now let's see. Now, can you see my slides?
No, Scott, no. You like one of us to run it in case you like to email?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not sharing. It says it's sharing.
We can just close the PowerPoint and start again, maybe.
Okay, bear with me. I'm terribly sorry. Let's try this.
Yes, I think something is coming on.
Ah, very good. Okay, it's a good thing you didn't have me here as an expert on technology, because I would have failed. Okay, let's see here.
We can see your screen, yes.
And do you see the slides full size on the
That's
screen?
right. We are.
Very good. Hey, it's amazing.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are geographically. I am really honored to present to you today and want to thank Ashish for the invitation to speak and for all of his assistance in getting this set up today. Here's our agenda. So I have really three questions that I've posed here. So in addition to a little brief intro into Hogan, some of you may know us, some of you don't. In addition to that, I'm going to try to speak to three key questions. One of those is, what is leadership? And this section really is about a focus on defining leadership appropriately and making the case for why we believe that defining leadership precisely matters. Second section, what is personality? Because our research shows that the personality of the leader is consequential for success of organizations. I also want to share some definition about how we define personality, and spend some time talking about how we measure personality. The third section is about assessing leadership using personality. And in this section, we'll review what we think are the key outcomes from Hogan's research and from other researchers' bodies of work about key outcomes of what happens when you get leadership right. I'll close with a few points about why all of this matters and why it might matter to you in your organizations. And then I think we'll have some time for questions too. So, brief introduction of Hogan to start with here. And Hogan was founded a little over 30 years ago, and by Robert and Joyce Hogan. Our mission then, as now, was to provide science-based insights that help individuals and organizations succeed. And although our focus today in this presentation will be on leadership, we have developed assessment solutions for all organization levels, for many different applications, and for each step in the employee lifecycle. The bottom point on this slide is probably one of the most critical, and because it really defines our approach, which is a highly scientific and data-based one. We've always been based on research and continue to do research on personality and organization success. This is a bit about Hogan by the numbers. To date, we've assessed about 9 million people. We work in 56 countries and 47 languages. As you can tell by the number of journal articles and validation studies, we really do take the science quite seriously here. We also certify users to, and most of the time these are HR professionals or talent management professionals, to use the assessments and to interpret them, and that certification process happens worldwide. I know many of you today are in India, so I want to introduce the face of Hogan in India, which is a wonderful company called Three Fish Consulting, and you can see their website there. But should you have concerns, questions, follow-up needs, Three Fish will be able to address those. So with that brief intro, let's talk a little bit about leadership. And to start with leadership, let's focus for a moment on competition. There are two kinds of competition that are important in business and in life. The first is competition within groups. That is the kind of competition that is about who gets promoted, who gets hired for the role, who gets moved into the CEO role, who gets the most resources in the company. And that's the question of who wins that competition is highly consequential, obviously, for the people who are involved in it. If you win the promotion, if you get selected, you win. If I don't get selected, I lose. So it's highly consequential for the individuals involved. However, the second kind of competition is what we call between group competition. And this is much more consequential for most of us because throughout human history, the groups who win over other groups survived while those who lost ceased to exist. So this is a consequential kind of competition for the organization as a whole, the group as a whole, human groups in general as a whole. And so we believe that leadership is most consequential for the second kind of competition, which is the kind of competition our organizations are engaged in every day. And we believe that makes leadership the most consequential force in the history of human affairs. So how would we define it? Well, historically, there are two ways it has been defined. One of those I will call the popular perspective. One I'll call the evolutionary perspective. We start with the popular one. In the a review of the literature, there are these two competing definitions. In this popular definition, the last time I looked on Amazon, there were about 9,000 leadership books out there, and lots of articles written about leadership, and many of those in the popular press and in books you read in the business section of the bookstore implicitly define leadership as the person who is in charge. That is, they define leadership in terms of the position, not the person. So if one is in a leadership position, one is a leader. That's how that definition works. Most academic research on leadership also uses this implicit definition. That is, they study groups of leaders, see what they are like, and then they say they have a description of leadership, what leadership is about. But that definition of leadership is about within group competition. It's about the people who won the promotion and got into the leadership role in the first place. As I mentioned, however, between group competition is where the action is. That's the most critical. It has the most critical implications for people in organizations. So it's about which groups will survive and which groups will perish. We prefer the second definition that you see here, the evolutionary perspective, which is based on a few fundamentals. The one being humans always have and always will live in groups. And so if you think about what the purpose of leadership is, the purpose of leadership is to help the group survive. That is, you should measure the outcome of leadership by the organizational outcomes produced. And so that makes a leader someone who is a resource for the team. That makes a leader someone who is skilled at building and sustaining productive teams. So in this definition, leadership is something done for the team. In the popular perspective, leadership is something done to the team by putting a leader in a role or assuming someone in a role is a leader. If you get this wrong or right, there are big consequences. Getting the decision wrong can have significant consequences for an organization. Recent estimates suggest that there are leaders with significant personality flaws in about somewhere the estimates are in the research 30 to 67% of leadership roles, the average being 50%. That is 50% of the leaders currently in place have significant flaws that could cause them to fail. A substantial number, as you can see on the screen, alienate their staff. These are all from research studies. 70% of the American workforce says the worst aspect of their lives is their boss. So getting it wrong has significant consequences, particularly human consequences. NIOSH is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. It's the federal agency in the US that monitors occupational safety. if you're not familiar with that. And as you can see here, their research shows that 40% of all workers see their jobs as stressful, but 75% of working adults say the most stressful aspect of their role is their immediate boss. So bad managers, poor leadership decisions create enormous health costs. You might say it is a national health problem. There was an interesting study in the UK a few years back that actually showed that 12% of employees actually actively fantasized about killing their boss. 12%. That says there's some very stressful leadership styles going on. There are financial consequences if you get it right, however, and economists are leading the way on this. Psychologists have been behind the game, but the economists have done some really nice research showing that high-performing CEO can add over 25 million over a 6-year tenure to their organization's bottom line. There's some really nice research on toxic leadership showing that it is more profitable for companies to avoid hiring a toxic leader by a factor of 2 to 1 than from recruiting a star performer. And then CEOs account for far more variability in firm performance than any other objective factor. So the CEO's or the leader's personality has significant consequences for organization outcomes. In the end, the keys to success in business are twofold. You make decisions about money and you make decisions about people. If you make bad decisions about money, your business will fail. If you make bad decisions about people, your business will also fail. So it's important to get it right. Decisions about people are by definition decisions about personality, and decisions about leadership are by definition decisions about leadership personality. So let's turn our attention to personality. Historically, there are 2 ways to think about personality. And again, definition really matters here. The first is identity. This is the you that you know. That is, this is how you describe yourself. If I were to ask you, what are you like? This would be your answer. Who am I way down deep? That is the historical and actually maybe most popular definition of leadership or of personality out there. It's been around since the early days of Freud, or perhaps before, so that's a little over 100 years of research on identity. There are no results to speak of. That is, it is difficult, if not impossible, to study scientifically because the only authority on your identity is you. And so by definition, it makes it at least extremely difficult to study scientifically. There's no taxonomy, that is, there is no common language about how people describe themselves. No generalizations can be drawn, no conclusions. So it has been really a failed definition. The second definition here is personality as reputation. This is the you that all the rest of us know. This is the you that is described by the people around you in the organization. And there's about 20, 30 years of research on reputation has been highly productive. There is a taxonomy called the Big Five, or the 5-factor model, probably many of you know about. It's relatively easy to study. All you have to do is get ratings from other people to study someone's reputation. Lots of generalizations can be made, lots of research outcomes about the linkage between one's reputation and job performance and many other important life outcomes. If I haven't convinced you for a moment, Freud said the 2 most important decisions we make in life are who to marry and what to do for work. And if you think about those 2 decisions in your own life, the question is, what percentage of those decisions did you get to make based on your identity versus what percentage of those decisions did others make based on your reputation? I haven't found anyone yet who's married who said that they just told their spouse who they were and what they were like, and that was a good enough thing. Reputation really matters in life. So how do we measure reputation for Hogan? I'm going to try to go through this relatively quickly here, but how do we measure reputation? We think there are three important lenses, and these are based on the research, body of research out there. So three important lenses to look through as you think about how you're going to measure reputation. One of those we call the bright side, the HPI. This is about everyday strengths and weaknesses. Can you do the job? I'll show you some examples in a moment. One of those is our motives, values, preferences inventory. This measures goals, interests, motives, values. They're about, will you like the job? Will you fit the culture? And then finally, the Hogan Development Survey. This is what we call the dark side. This is about the leadership flaws. What will get in your way, or what could get in your way of being successful as a leader. So that's sort of the basic model based on many, many years of research, not only our own, but others. The Hogan personality, as I mentioned, is focused on measuring those day-to-day characteristics that help us get ahead in organizations and help us get along in organizations. So they really are consequential for our careers and our education and many other life outcomes. And this was developed for use in the workplace. These are the characteristics that the HPI measures. I'm not going to go through these in detail. But you can see that they are these everyday things, like how resilient are you, how self-confident, how outgoing, are you self-disciplined, do you think in big pictures or creative, curious terms, and so forth. Those kind of day-to-day characteristics that we use to describe each other based on the big five. Well, the dark side, the Hogan Development Survey concerns these behavioral tendencies that can be strengths, but also can be overused when we are not paying attention, or we're not self-managing, maybe when we're stressed or bored. But these things that tend to pop out and be overused when we are not self-managing. And these characteristics can really degrade our ability to communicate, to manage people effectively, to delegate effectively, to make timely and effective decisions. So they're highly consequential for leadership, clearly. These are the 11 scales or 11 characteristics that the HDS measures. And again, I won't go through the detail, but you can see that these are things like being overly emotional, or being overly confident, or being perfectionistic and overly focused on the detail as opposed to the bigger picture. So things that can really get in the way, especially for leadership. Interestingly, the dark side, despite a fair amount of research out there about it, the dark side often gets overlooked. And so just a quick slide about why you should pay attention to the dark side. There are new examples every day. So I just picked a few out there that you may know. People who, leaders who have had significant organizational problems, and those problems have been linked back to the style, the personality, the values of the leader. So they're highly consequential, not only for the individuals involved, but if you think about Facebook, Volkswagen, Nissan, Wells Fargo, Boeing, Countryside Financial, et cetera, the organizations suffered greatly because of the dark side, the flaws of the leaders. And then finally, the third lens, motives, values, preferences. This concerns our interests, our values, that's critical for fit. Leaders' values shape the organization culture around them through the kinds of behaviors and results they reward or sanction. And these values, motives, preferences also bear on the fit between an individual's values and the culture of the organization in which he or she works. So again, a consequential slice of personality. When we put this together, we really did a survey of the research that had been done, and there's a significant body of research out there about motivation, and created a taxonomy of about 10 broad themes here, which you see on the screen. So these are things like a need for attention, a need for being in charge, being in power, a need to do things for the benefit of other people, an interest in creativity, an interest in research and more analytical kinds of work. So the kinds of things that motivate people day to day. So if we have a clear definition of leadership and we have a clear definition of personality and have some insights about how we can measure personality, the key question becomes which aspects of personality are most important for leadership? What should we measure? So I want to talk about 4 important sources of information from the research that help us try to answer that question. The first is a really clever piece of research. This started in the late 1980s by 2 researchers named Kouzes and Posner that you may have heard of. But they started by surveying employees, workers to ask them, what is it that you need most from your leader? And since then, they've replicated that research around the world in many different industries, many different geographies, many different kinds of companies, many levels within companies. And the findings are very consistent. 4 things. That's what people want from their leader. First of all is, integrity. Can I trust you? Is the person honest? Is this person going to sell me out? Is this person going to exploit his or her position of power and the company's resources for personal gain or for the good of all? Competence is, followers want to be assured that their leaders know what they're talking about, that they have some body of knowledge that's relevant to the industry they're in, the type of business they're in, the type of markets they serve. So this is about having that competence and being able to exercise good judgment. There's an example of this that's a little stunning, I think, and that is a couple of years ago, June of 2018, AT&T bought Time Warner. So you had a telecommunications technology company buying really a creative entertainment focused company. Well, that was June 2018. As of March 2019, every senior executive at Time Warner was gone voluntarily. AT&T had little to no experience managing media assets. That is, they didn't have competence in the business they were trying to run. And it was really devastating for that company. Vision. Can you articulate a higher purpose? Can you paint a picture of where we're going as an organization? Can you justify why that's important? So this is a really practical concern on people's part. Where are we going? Why should we be doing this? And then finally, inspiring. And this sounds like on the surface that it's about being charismatic and being a rah-rah cheerleader, but it's really not so much about that. It is about, do you lead by example? Do you demonstrate commitment? Are you engaged in the work of your team or your organization directly? And so are you inspiring people by leading by example? And those are the 4 things. And you can, I'm not going to go through all these next 2 slides in detail, but just to give you some idea about how we might translate those into the personality characteristics that would produce them. Right. So humility is an obvious one for trust. I will trust you if I feel like you're going to listen to me, if you're not always focused on your perspective and willing to admit your mistakes and listen to other people, if you're self-aware. Competence, are you hands-on in your style? Are you engaged? Are you willing to admit mistakes, learn from them? Are you driven to win? Vision. Do you have this broader curiosity about how things work? Are you selfish or non-selfish? Are you focused on helping other people achieve goals, or are you focused on your own goals? So there is some personality characteristics and values like altruism that we can point to measure in that case. And then finally, inspiring. Do you hold egalitarian values? That is, do you want people to succeed based on their merits? versus political connections and so forth? Are you committed and focused on the work of the team? So we can translate those into personalities. I think a lot of insights from this first source of research, which is about the view from the lead. So two other sources here. The first on the left here is from a researcher named Fred Luthans. He's an academic who has studied leadership extensively for about 40 years or so. And he did a wonderful piece of research and wrote a book about it called Real Managers. And in this research, he studied 457 leaders, managers, people who were in the manager role, and studied them for a year and collected all kinds of ratings on them from coworkers. He did assessments on them. He had a research team who actually followed these managers around and did behavioral observations of them on the job, real time. What were they doing? How were they spending their time? The interesting thing from this research is he found in the end, looking at those data, that there were two distinct groups of leaders there. One he called emergent leaders. These were people who spent a lot of their time networking, engaging in inter-office politics, working to get promoted. And in fact, they were a group of leaders who were promoted at a much faster rate than the second group. So that networking paid off for them. The second group, however, was a group he called effective leaders. They spent their time working with their teams, removing barriers, helping their teams make decisions and solve problems, helping their teams enhance their performance. He called these effective leaders. And this is very much in line with that evolutionary view of leadership, the definition of leadership. That is, leadership is a resource for the group. And he actually found there were a group of leaders that fit that definition, but there were also this other group that he called emergent leaders. By the way, there was only a 10% overlap. That is, rarely did one of those managers engage in both of these kinds of things. So, there's a lesson here, and that is being charismatic, being extroverted, being good at networking and good at politics. Those things will get you promoted. They will get you into a leadership role. They will not make you a leader, however. What will make you a leader is spending time with your team, helping them solve problems, helping them succeed. And Luthans really put that into stark relief for us. On the right here is another source of research information that is just incredibly well done, and it's been around for a while. This is Jim Collins' research that underlies the book Good to Great, which you're probably familiar with. But what Collins did, he set out to find companies that had underperformed the market for a period of at least 15 years, and then had a major shift and outperformed the market, comparison companies in the market, for another 15 years minimally. And he started with thousands of companies, but he found 11 that fit this, that pattern, that had this good to great shift. And he was looking for structural elements, that is, the organization design, how people reported to each other, the size, those kinds of things. He was looking for organizational structure elements that would help him explain how that shift took place and what differentiated great companies from good companies. What he found, and in his book, he talks about being surprised by this, but what he found was the shift was precipitated by a change in the CEO. And then when he studied the CEOs, he found two core characteristics that were very consistent. One, he called a strong professional will, or a compelling, unwavering resolve. That is, the strong drive for results, ambition for getting things done. And then secondly, a compelling modesty, a personal modesty. So, probably one of these analogies you have heard that I think sums this up nicely is that he said, these are leaders who look out the window to assign recognition and look in the mirror to assign blame. That is, they are all about the team. And so I think, again, this gives us some clues about what we should measure if we're thinking about measuring leadership defined as a resource for the group. And finally, of course, I have to talk about Bob Hogan and his research. But again, I think it's a great source of information for what should you measure. So I mentioned before that, you know, humans have always lived in groups and always will live in groups. And the research shows also that humans have 3 core needs. And again, regardless of race, gender, geography, culture, whatever, 3 core human needs. One is to get along with people, that is to be in community with other people. One is to get ahead, that is there is a selfish drive for all of us, right? And we want to take care of ourselves, even if we also might want to take care of other people. And then the third one is about making meaning. What's important here in our discussion of leadership in particular, I think, is this getting along and getting ahead. This is another thing Freud talked about. He didn't phrase it this way, but he did talk about these 2 opposing forces, and they are often in conflict. That is, I may want to help you or help my organization, but that may be the worst outcome for me individually, or vice versa. I might want to take advantage of things for my own self-promotion, but that may damage the organization if I do it. So these things are always in tension. And a leader's job then is to help people, help the group manage that tension, balance that tension, because you do need both. If you think about, you know, primitive groups, getting along is important because there is strength in numbers. Getting ahead is also important because you have to have some drive to do something in order to help the group survive. But those 2 things are in tension. So the leader's role is to help balance those in service of a higher purpose, which is something about the team's goals or the organization's goals. So 4 sources of information about what to measure, and I'll sum them up a little bit here, just very generally. These, I refer to these as the core elements that are essential to effective leadership. Now, these may vary in strength a little bit by organization. There may be some other elements that are critical in certain kinds of roles and so forth, but think about these as the core that seem to be supported by long-standing research out there. Integrity, can I trust you? Competence, do you know something about what you're doing? Do you have a higher purpose, and can you communicate to us? Do you lead by example? Are you making good judgments? Are you humble enough to continue to learn? You know, we hear a lot about leadership agility, which is about, are you willing to learn? Are you open to new things? Are you willing to admit mistakes and admit what you don't know, and then willing to go try to learn it? Having ambition for the team, but not for self. And then having that interpersonal skill, which is really important to balance those needs for getting along and getting ahead in the organization. So we've defined leadership, we've defined personality, we talked a little bit about how to measure that, and looked at a little bit of the research about what's important to measure if we're going to try to measure leadership effectively. And so you may be wondering, well, so what? What's really the point here? Well, here are a few outcomes. These are all from the research literature. So these are not things I made up. They really are outcomes from the research literature about what happens when you get leadership right. That is, what does leadership predict? Well, these first couple are about CEO leadership. There's some really great research showing that CEOs with the kinds of characteristics we just talked about, in fact, have higher performing leadership teams, and they have what researchers call greater strategic flexibility. That is, as a team, they're willing to admit when they've gotten it wrong. As a team, they are willing to admit what they don't know and go out and find experts who can help them fill in those gaps. So they have greater strategic flexibility. They are more collaborative because there is simply less fear in those teams to admit that they don't know something or admit that there's a problem they don't know how to solve. Another key outcome is this culture of willingness to admit mistakes. That is broadly true across organizations. And, you know, there are lots of organizations you could point to. I was just reading the other day in the Wall Street Journal, a really interesting article about GE under Jeff Immelt as CEO. And Immelt had this great vision, and it remains, I think, a great vision, which was about building a digital cloud around the industrial businesses globally at GE, and then using those for other businesses as well. I mean, really incredibly compelling vision. But the culture of the organization was such that no one would tell him that he was wrong about something. No one would critique the strategy. No one would tell him they weren't prepared to execute on this or they didn't have the knowledge to do it. There simply was a culture of unwillingness to admit mistakes or gaps in knowledge. And ultimately that cost Immelt his job, but it also cost GE, billions of dollars. So it's a really important outcome that is linked directly to leader personality. Leadership personality is correlated with higher engagement, and higher engagement is correlated with business unit and organization performance. So there really is a direct link from leadership personality to employee engagement to organizational performance. Just practically, there's also lower turnover and lower absenteeism with positive leadership characteristics versus flawed leadership characteristics, regardless of the kind of flawed leadership characteristics. Some great research out of Norway on that particular topic. Higher productivity as an organization, higher customer satisfaction ratings, because again, employee engagement is related to customer satisfaction. And so you can draw the line from leadership personality to customer satisfaction, and then fewer counterproductive behaviors, which we've talked about a fair amount. So why should you care? I think there are lots of very clear research-based, science-based outcomes that are important, regardless of the kind of organization you are in. So let me close with kind of 4 final points. One is it's really important to define personality appropriately. We believe the overwhelming support is define leadership as a resource for the group, someone who helps the group solve their problems and succeed. Secondly, measure characteristics in leaders that are related to team effectiveness. So that's why I focus on that leadership core, because all of those characteristics are related to positive outcomes for the team or the organization. So if you define leadership in terms of being a resource for the team, and if you define personality as reputation, you want to measure reputational characteristics that we know through research are related to team effectiveness. Third, you overlook the dark side at your peril. And if you're in an organization that uses primarily interviews, for example, you are overlooking the dark side. The dark side characteristics rarely show up in interviews. They show up, down the road when that leader's stressed, when that leader is not paying attention, bored, not self-managing, they're comfortable in their environment. That's when those overused strengths, those dark side characteristics tend to pop out, not during an interview process. So it's really important to measure the dark side up front and weed out those with significant flaws. And so finally, personality matters. We believe who you are is how you lead. And the definitions along the way are incredibly important to pay attention to. With that, I will say thank you. Here's Oops, I don't have the contact information there again. I will just remind you that Three Fish is the face of Hogan in India, and you can find their website out there easy enough if you have follow-up questions and so forth. And I think we have a little time, Ashish, for some questions here. I think you might be muted.
Ashish, you are on mute, please.
Yes. So yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So thanks, Scott. Wonderful insight. Wanted to hear directly from somebody from Hogan, and you are none other than you are here for us. We wanted to Dr. Robert also, but I know he's very busy, and wish we can get him and hear from him as well. One of the best person to talk on this leadership tool and all. So some of the yeah, we have 10 minutes, Scott, and we have 4 HR leader from a different countries. They will be asking some question, and so would like to share something, Dr. Scott, that in the COVID, what we have experienced, leadership is failed absolutely, and there are other people who emerge as a leader. So leadership, absolutely is not the title. Actually, it's more of accountability, ownership, and what you do actually on the ground and show the result. I always use one statement, Scott, that leadership, what we say is unleashing potential in others, but misusing, overusing, and underusing. Yeah. So that's how actually happen. Very 5% actually leader really use the talent in a proper way.
I'm sorry, I'm just having some trouble hearing you.
Yeah, no, I was saying, Scott, that only 5% leader, they actually use the talent in a proper way in the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of questions coming, especially related to the tool, and you already said, there is an India Spock, so people can connect. Before I hand over to 4 global HR leader, I wanted to show some statistics, Scott, and those are very interesting. Let me share the screen. RK, can I get the access?
Let's see, I need to stop sharing, I think.
Yeah, now you will.
Okay, great. Yeah. So where do I go?
Are you able to?
Yes. Okay, so here, Scott, we got good response, very good response, and it's only because of, your organization and you. So we got over 1,400 people who register, and there are 500 people already on Zoom. Then there are more than 200 people on YouTube.
Wonderful.
This is the representation of the people, those who are registered, and I'm sure equally they will be there as attendee as 81% from India, rest of them from other countries. Then this is another data which says, we have 72% working HR, then rest of them fall in different category. And we also take the data, how's the breakup of the level. So leadership level, we have around 20%, senior management 24, then middle is 39. And this is about which kind of people we have, HR heads, HR journalists, compensation and all. Now this is very interesting, Scott, you'll be interesting to know. So we asked 5 questions. So, the question was, I would like to have association with Hogan Assessment. First question, I would like to know more about Hogan. So 52% saying they would like to know more about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And we'd like to know you as well.
I think less than 5% saying they are already using your tool in the organization. 20%, close to 20%, they says they may explore for their organization later. And then you will not believe, around, I think 10% people saying they wanted to be authorized partner and coach. 17% says, no requirement. So I will pause here and I hand over to my 4 global HR leader. Let me stop sharing. Where can we do that? Okay. So we are joined by 4 HR leaders, and I would request them to introduce their name, designation, and they belong to which countries. And feel free to ask any question to Scott. Any question you can pick up from the chat box which is posted by delegates, or you can frame your own question. I'm sure all of us, some of us will have common query. Let's start with ladies first. So I will start with Deepika, then I will follow Abhishek, then Bimbo, and then Chinmay and Aditya.
Thank you, Ashish. Hi, Scott. Thank you for that really insightful session. It was really, really interesting. And we are getting a lot of questions. So I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Deepika Banerjee. I am based in India. I co-head HR for Goldman Sachs in India. That's the role. And my question was that considering the Hogan tool is a self-assessment, and you talked about the fact that it measures reputation, which is something that you said is how others experience an individual. And it would be very interesting if you could, throw some light on how it does that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Yes, when we set out to develop the tools, the initial research that we conducted involved giving one participant a set of items to complete, that is the self-report part, right? And giving them rating forms to have people at work and at home complete on them, describing them. And so we looked for, initially, the way we selected items, for example, on the HPI was what items correlated with what descriptions from other people. So over time, we were able to build up these patterns saying that if someone is described as outgoing, for example, they are much more likely to say true to these sets of items. And, or if they are described as introverted, they're more likely to say true or false to this set of items. So that's how we are. So the goal was to be able to predict reputation. So the next best thing to going and asking people, to describe each other, right? But that's how it was started. And since then, over the 30 years we've been around, as you might imagine, we've used all kinds of 360 data. We've done many, many rating studies. But in the initial days of doing the research, we literally gave people items to complete themselves and gave family members and coworkers rating forms to do on them.
Yeah, thank you. I think that answers my question. And has that inventory evolved over a period of time, or is it the one?
Yeah, we practice what we call psychometric Kaizen psychometrics. That is, we are always focused on continuously improving. So even at the item level, we monitor. We have a wonderful data science team, and they monitor the behavior of each item all the time, globally, across 47 languages. And to make sure that the item characteristics, that is the number of endorsements, et cetera, are substantially the same, so that we can use the tools across cultures, across languages, and so forth. So, and occasionally, as you might imagine, we find items that don't operate that way, and so we replace them. Okay. So we always have a cadre of experimental items that we are gathering data on that may not be used for scoring, but we're gathering data on them to use them as potential replacements. We also, from time to time, do wholesale changes. So in 2014, for example, we reworked a couple of the scales on the HDS, ones that we found were skewed, where the distributions were skewed in ways that didn't make sense. We've done that at times in the HPI as well. Currently, we're working on upgrading the psychometrics on the MVPI, which will be out next year. We're gathering data on it right now. So yeah, they do evolve. The core characteristics that we are measuring have not changed. And the reason for that is that at time one, we really based them on decades, if not a century's worth of research about how do you define personality. So those haven't changed so much.
Thank you very much. I'll hand it back to you, Ashish.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott.
So I believe Abhishek, yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Ashish. Scott, good morning, and thanks for that insightful session.
Thank you.
from what Deepika was talking. I'll basically, my question is around the wartime and a peacetime leader. And in today's context, you have a lot of chaos and you have leadership vacuum. How do you see this coming through in your inventory, in your personality assessment, that some of our participants who are looking at leaders for this context can gain some insights through that assessment too?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and you're right. There's a lot being written about this these days, and I'd separate a couple of things here. One is I think there are some differences in the core leadership required in an emergency crisis situation. I mean, in the moment, not in general, but in the moment. You know, if a building is on fire and a child is inside, you don't need a leader who takes consensus, right? You need a leader who either goes in him or herself or tells someone else to do that, right? So, but that's an immediate crisis situation that where there is no time. Beyond that, I think the data are very clear. Peacetime or wartime, I think the leaders who have this, as Collins says, have this sort of dual balance between humility enough to admit what they don't know, to listen to experts, to gather other information, but combined with this extremely strong will to get things done, this drive to get results. And you know, I'm glad you asked this question because often people think, well, one of the problems we see often is leaders who are overly self-confident and overly driven. We see this in the United States every single day in our president, for example. Not to use political examples, but for example. But people see that all the time. And they sometimes conclude then that, well, okay, the antidote to that is having a leader who is humble all the time. And our research says no, and Collins' research says no, and many others say no. No, it's got to be both. It has to be both together. And I think that's true in wartime or peacetime. That is, if you're trying to lead a country, you have to be attentive to what's best for the whole. Best for the most, right? And you can't endlessly sit around debating what's the best course of action. So that drive is critical too. But I think it takes both.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll pass it back to Ashish. Thanks.
So we move into now Nigeria.
Okay, good day, everybody. Hello, Scott. I would first of all like to say a very big thank you for this wonderful opportunity, learning opportunity. You know, it's really insightful. So for me, my question is, you know, how would you define a leader? Because, you know, the definition tends to be vague. Different people, different cultures, different organizations have different perceptions of what a good leader should be. So from your experience, what's the best practice, or what are the common factors that will define a good leader? Then are leaders made or are they born?
That's the most difficult question I'll hear all day, I think. A very good question. So let me speak to the first part. We believe to answer the question about defining leadership, you have to also ask the question about why does leadership exist? I mean, that's why we start with this, what I call the evolutionary view. Why does leadership exist? You know, why do ears exist? Why does your nose exist? Well, there's a real purpose for that, right? And there's an evolutionary purpose. And the people who evolved certain characteristics survived, and the people who didn't evolve those, or creatures who didn't evolve those, didn't survive. And we believe that is literally the same thing is true for human groups. You know, if you look at the history of mankind, it is rife with warfare. It's always, warfare has always existed. And it is important in that context that people be able to band together and work together in order to survive. But that's not enough. Just like the last question, the answer to the last question, that's not enough. They have to work together toward a common purpose. And we believe that's the leader's role. So if you think about defining leadership, that's really when you get to the core of it. That's what it's about. It is about helping people work together in community, but for a specific directed purpose. And we believe that is true for all leaders in all organizations at all times, because it has been true for all humans at all times in all organizations. So that's why I called the characteristics I talked about, I called the leadership core, because I believe they are all related to that core. But you also said, different leaders, different companies have different needs. And that is, of course, true too. A startup needs certain things that a multi-billion-dollar corporation doesn't need from the leader, right? So we think start with this core and then build onto it. And that's a lot of the research we do for our client organizations is exactly around that. We know some things about leadership, but they also have some organizational needs for leadership. So I think you're exactly right. And there's great research, for example, showing that entrepreneurial leaders who are effective have certain kinds of personality characteristics versus, high level corporate leaders, and they are quite different in many aspects. So are they born and are they made? I want to speak to that one. Largely speaking, our perspective is they are born. And the reason I say that, and now it's a little misleading, but what we do know about personality is that for most of us by about age 25, our core personality characteristics remain stable from that point on through the lifespan. So at some point, our personalities become relatively stable and fixed. And so in that sense, if you're 30 years old and don't display a lot of these characteristics related to leadership, the chances of you displaying those when you are 60 years old is fairly small, right? So born in that sense. But I also will say this, there's good research out there by genetic researchers where they have found identical twins, that is, twins who share 100% of their DNA in common, identical twins who were separated at birth and reared apart. And they have been able to show that about 50% of personality characteristics are purely determined by genetics. So the ultimate answer to your question is born or made? Yes. Yes, both. But the farther you get into your life and your career, the more fixed is likely to be. The more difficult it's going to be to change it.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. We have two more questions, but before that, we are lucky to have Scott Dave Ulrich on this session. And Dave was one of our earlier speakers. Dave, if you can hear us, please grace this occasion to give an insight and ask any question to Scott. If he is able to hear, Dave. Okay, we'll come back to Dave later. So let me hand over to now Chinmay.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for a very insightful session. Really enjoyed.
Thank you.
I just have one question. I'm currently based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It's more a question, I would say, similar to what Abhishek asked, related to leadership in large organizations which are going through significant transformation or have gone through significant transformation, whether it's driven by a significant change in their product or line of business. And what have you observed in terms of organizations who successfully transitioned into a completely, a new kind of a business, or who failed also? What did you observe from a leadership standpoint, which stood out or which did not work? And a follow-up question would be, is there any trend you saw in terms of these leaders who are typically coming internally from those organizations or from outside?
Wow. This is really good questions. So let me speak to the first a little bit. What we have seen in a lot of organizations that were not able to change is we frequently find narcissistic leaders at the top. Because, and so, a couple of things about that. One is narcissistic leaders, high bold in our HDS terms, often are so self-confident, so self-assured, so sure that they have the right answer, that they are unwilling to look at any data that is counter to their assertions. So they get stuck. They're very rigid in that regard. They really get stuck in, no, this is the way to do this. And, I guess a classic example of this is well, there are many of them out there, but IBM might be one that everybody would know about. IBM was the premier, it wasn't called this at the time, but the premier technology company, computer company. And these little upstart firms started creating PCs, and the leadership at IBM said, no, we know about computing. This is just a passing fad. It's going to go away. We don't need to pay attention to it. We're just going to keep building these giant machines. And I think it's a good example of how organizations get stuck, and particularly very successful organizations get stuck. But narcissistic leaders fuel being stuck in that way. On the other hand, I mentioned before this notion of learning agility, which is really about being open, being interested in learning new things, even things that may be counter to my position. And there's really something to that for organizations that are able to flex and switch their products and adapt to new environmental circumstances. So really requiring leaders who have that flexibility and that broad level of curiosity necessary to consider other points of view and other possibilities. So I think those are two key differentiators between those who fail and those who succeed. But I also think it's a little broader than that, in that leaders who will listen to and actually look for problems to solve in the organization, as opposed to getting people to pretend that they don't exist.
Thank you, Scott. So before we go to the last question, Scott, two questions very quick. Which is the book on leadership you like to suggest? Any book on the leadership you like to suggest?
Oh, can I suggest three? So one, I talked about two of them. One is this Real Managers, because it's a very nice piece of research, and it really does highlight the differences between those who get promoted and those who are actually effective with groups. So that's one. Good to Great, if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book. It's very readable, and that's another one, and it has a lot of description about the kinds of leadership that was effective. The third one is a book called Leadership and the Fate of Organizations, and that's by Bob Hogan. And it summarizes a lot of what I talked about today. That is, it talks about how leadership is consequential for the outcomes of your organization. So, which he refers to as the fate of your organization. So those three.
Whom do you consider your leader, Scott?
My leader? Oh, that's easy. Bob Hogan. I've worked for him and or been friends with him for over 30 years. And he's been a wonderful, selfless mentor to me over that time.
Scott, if I extend that question, any other leader other than Mr. Hogan that you really admire?
Yeah, I think there maybe are a few. I'll talk about one high visibility one, and that is this gentleman named Alan Mullally. Alan Mullally was CEO of Ford Motor Company. When he came in, the business was failing, and there's a fair amount written about this. I'll give you actually a couple of examples, but Alan Mullally is one. When he came in, the business failing. People were not admitting that the business was failing. In fact, he has talked about this a fair amount, that in the first few operations reviews he did, they had this red, yellow, green ops review process, and everybody came in and everything was green. Everything was wonderful. And yet the company was bleeding billions of dollars. And he eventually had to terminate a couple of people to make the point that I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to tell me what I need to hear. And so I really admire him for that. A second quick example is a gentleman named Hubert Joly. Mr. Joly was the CEO, he's retired now, but was the CEO of Best Buy, which was the largest electronics retailer in the United States. When he took over, the former CEO had just been fired for an inappropriate relationship with an employee. The chairman and founder was under investigation for financial improprieties and self-dealing. The company was failing. The Amazons and all of the tech startup companies were eating Best Buy's lunch. They have these big brick and mortar stores. And Hubert Joly came in and spent an enormous amount of time in the stores with the employees who were actually working with customers and asked them what needed to happen in order for the company to turn around and be successful again. And he did that. I mean, the stock performance, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but the stock performance from where he started to where it ended is phenomenal. And the way he did that was exactly showing these balanced characteristics of incredible drive and incredible humility. So I really admire him a lot. He writes in HBR occasionally. You'll see some articles from him talking about some of this.
Thank you, Scott. So here we move to Aditya. Before Aditya, Dave, in case you are able to hear us, we would like to have either insight from you on the leadership assessment, or ask any question to Scott. Feel free to. Okay, we move to Aditya. Aditya, if you're able to hear us. Okay, Aditya is also not there, I believe. Okay, so I pause here. So I think we are already overshooted the timing. I hand over to RK to sum up and then close the session. Thanks, Scott. Thank you so much to agree and accepted this invite. We are really grateful. One question was coming again and again, that can this tool be used for the pre-hiring recruitment purpose?
Yes, about in terms of application, about 50% of our assessment use is for pre-hire. The other 50% being for development, mostly leadership development.
Thank you. Yes,
thank you, Scott, for your
thank you
on of course the entire engine of Hogan and the entire science of personality, but also freewheeling discussions on leadership and how do you see the current evolution of leadership, a current way in which the leadership is kind of responding to the unprecedented circumstances that we have on account of COVID. Great insights and an evening well spent, and I'm sure it's been a morning of great interactions for you. And
absolutely
pleasure having you with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you all. You're very kind, and it's a wonderful that everybody showed up, and I appreciate that.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you all participants who logged in today. The link for this is going to be available on our YouTube channel on ProventusHR. Please feel free to come and visit and view at any point in time. Ashish?
We'll continue with some announcement in case somebody missed out in the beginning. So I'm happy to announce, this is the webinar festival is going on. So tomorrow we have, full day webinar arranged by Grey Sales, World HRD Congress and HRShaper. You can go through the chat box. You can find the registration link. Then day after tomorrow, there is a ETHR World Full Day HR Conference. And there are going to be, good number of HR leaders speaking full day conference. Both tomorrow and day after, there is no fees. Then we are going to have a SHRM India conference, which is on 29th and 30th. That is a paid conference. In case anybody is looking for good discount or bulk discount, you can contact me. I already share my email ID, my number, you know that. And then there is one major event is coming. RK would like to share about the Impact Global.
So Impact Global is organizing an HR Summit India 2020, 3rd to 7th of August, with multiple tracks on HR technology, HR learning and development, and leadership. And they've extended a 60% discount to the members of HRShapers and invitees of ProventusHR. The link is, I'm posting it on the chat box. Please do look it up and see if you would want to attend. It will be a great opportunity to kind of hear you. And I believe Ashish is also going to be speaking along with other leading luminaries of HR and leadership profession. John Mattone obviously is one of the stars and speakers in the entire summit.
Thanks, RK. Then our next session, as I said, it's on HRShaper. Next session is on 1st August, and the speaker is Captain Raghu Raman. He's very well known in the field of, I attended his session before 15 years. That was leadership at 360 feet, and then he is TEDx speaker and very well known. Scott, since you are there, I like to ask one question. That in the era of COVID, in the coronavirus season, which country has emerged as a good leader? Not as a not as a prime minister and all, but which country do you think has really performed very well?
Wow, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think every country's had its own problems, and it was, many of which are out of the leader's control. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair answer, Scott.
It just came in my mind. So, guys, I'm again saying, there are 3-4 announcements we have made. ETHR is day after tomorrow. World HRD Congress, Grey Sales is tomorrow. Then SHRM is 29th and 30th of this month. Please reach out to me for any discount. And the Impact Global is on 3rd to 7th. That's a 4-day conference, and there is a discount code also. So we log out here, RK, and thank you, Scott. Thank you so much again. And thanks, Blake, in case he is hearing me, because he was the person making everything happen. And we look forward to see you. And we like to actually hear from Dr. Robert also. I don't know whether he can make it sometime, but yes, let's see.
Of course.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much, please.
So, RK, those who are there, I mean, in case anybody would like to have any conversation and available for some discussion, we can take them in a speaker box. I have already posted information for ETHR. I have already posted information for our next session, HRShaper, which Captain Raghu Raman, we all know, and he is going to talk again on the leadership, and his talk is going to be different. And in case you haven't heard him, please don't miss out. 1st August, 6:30. Yeah. Aditya is not there. Mehul, you are there?
I think Mehul has also left.
Okay, let's see anybody known faces we can get inside and just have some conversation. People are logging out, no doubt. Please raise your hand in case you just want to have a conversation, share some insight. We are there for 5-10 minutes more. Let's get Nikhil, Amrita, Surya, Ramdas. Let's see if they are there. RK, you like to check who has raised the hand?
I will do that. Let me ask Ramdas, Surya.
Avinash also, Avinash Dikshit.
Amrita, Nikhil, and Surya. I'm not able to. Yeah,
Hi,
Avinash.
Ashish. Amrita this side.
I am.
Hi. Hi. Hello, guys. I'm Amrita. I'm working as HR head at Great Place IT Services. I'm based in Nagpur, and actually we are working for Great Place to Work. And today is like I'm having one question. Just wanted to ask that for the leadership assessment, what are the various tools or what are the various criteria they were using? Like, is there any point methodology for the personality assessment test, or they what that pictures method, or what are the various things they were using for it? Hello.
Yeah, Amrita. So I RK here, and I've used Hogan in the past in the
Okay.
organization I've worked with. This
Okay.
is a psychometric test which is administered paper pen earlier and now online. And the emphasis is more on psychometric with words and sentences and text, rather than using the thematic appreciation or the picture appreciation kind of tools in terms of assessing
So
personality.
like graphology or something like?
No. It is primarily word choices, sentence choices kind of tests.
Okay, so what, like multiple choices question and
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, Amrita. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's get Rahul Padke from Bahrain. In case he is still there, Rahul, would like to see you again.
Rahul Fadke, yes.
Can I ask the question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, RK. This is Nikhil Kumar. I head the HR for Electro Drive Powertrain Solutions. And I've been a very good friend of Ashish, known for long years.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Basically, I'm a certified psychometric assessor. I've done close to 5,000 assessments. One question which is there very much. When I'm a certified assessor, can I change the behavioral trait, knowing what words will imply what? So what are the chances that whatever the tools we use, okay, and if someone knows the tool very well, can change his trait according to the suiting the job requirement?
Well, Nikhil, you are a master of psychometrics and the tool, and you know exactly where your question is coming in from. But yes, if you know the tool and what the tool is trying to figure out, there is, in my sense, to some extent that you can try and game it. But the more advanced and more research systems have a validation inbuilt and have a inbuilt methodology of being able to trace or track where you're trying to game the entire system. And that's the reason why some of these well-researched systems are far more appropriate and are actually invested in by organizations for leadership levels. But yes, if it is not as well-researched and as well-validated, the question holds valid, is my assessment. And I'm not a psycho assessor. You are much better and much more knowledgeable about this.
I can share you a few insights, RK. See what happens if you take a test, if you're fully stressed or in different states of mind, your entire assessment goes differently. So basically, any psychological assessment, you get 3 parts of the assessment. One is, what is your true behavioral trait? What is that something you demonstrate? And what is that what people see in you? So basically, what I cannot change is what is my inherent quality or behavior trait.
Right.
Change is what I want to show to the people and what people perceive about me.
And that's true.
Yeah, so Nikhil, I think, okay, again, let's take Shrikant also, Shrikant and Avinash Dikshit, if they are there. Shrikant Kalyan Sundram. So Nikhil, answer to your question, I think, all the tools is, first is, we need to understand the audience. Yeah.
Correct.
Audience is there because in India, I tell you, from state to state, audience are different. Okay. One may not be, suitable to, same set of people in, North, South and XYZ because they have different kind of personality and thought process. Maybe, it's also depend upon when do we use the test, which level, which time, in the entire life cycle of employee, when do you use the test? In the entry point or the leadership or the promotion, the increment, all these are very important. And there are the people who actually know how to play around with all this tool, See, tons of questions there on the Google and internet, they know okay, how to answer and especially the HR people and all, But I think what I want to sum up and say is that it's more dependent upon which kind of employee you have, which kind of culture you have, how much they have been, nurtured in the culture. They can easily answer, the way they want, the way you want them to.
And Ashish, one of the challenges which I have witnessed, which I've seen that most of the psychiatrist assessmenting tool, they use adjectives or the words. Sometimes people are not able to understand the meaning of those words, and the way you respond, the entire assessment goes in a different way.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that's more of confusion they create because they will ask the one question in a different way 10 times.
Correct.
And then try to see the result whether answer is the same. If it is not, then then guys trying to play around with the system and he's not stable and he cannot think in a proper way in XYZ. Great. We have a few more people: Rahul, Shrikant, Clay, and who's P. Ramdas, A. Merchant. We would like to see your face in case you can switch on your video. Alright, Shrikant, yes, switch.
Hi. I was just, my bandwidth kam tha.
Okay. Great, Shrikant. Great to have you. So
Okay, nice to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Zoom, we are able to see at least each other. If this COVID could have come before 15 years, God knows, we would not be able to see each other.
So yesterday I was attending one program where it talks about resilience leadership assessment. How during these tough times, leaders have their resilience in place.
Shrikant, forget, I mean, I'm sorry if there are many senior people there and all. Leadership has failed 100% in COVID, including I can say for myself. There are the basic thing, company and leader do not have in the place even today. If COVID, actually the COVID, the serious COVID, the danger COVID start from tomorrow and all is work from home. Believe me, we will not be able to survive one. And there are other people who emerge as a leader. I want to give an example of Sonu Sood. So many personalities, they wanted to see their leader, start from Amitabh Bachchan and, so many. But look at, the guy who just came from where and, he did so many wonders, right? He's still doing.
Yes.
Right?
I think a very interesting point, Ashish, that you make, and in a study of leadership, there is a peacetime leader, and that's what Scott also referred to, or one of the questions came up. And there is a wartime leader. Each of these situations require different leadership traits, for example, to kind of pull the country or pull the organization through. So if you notice, towards World War II end, for a large period of time, Winston Churchill was the wartime leader of UK. And he actually was stellar in his leadership in terms of the Allies winning the war. But post the war, he was not able to win his position back. So the two situations are very different. You know, one requires more of being able to collaborate and manage along with people, which is the peacetime. But the wartime is also about taking a lot of quick decisions based on your instincts, based on your risk-taking ability, and being able to move forward. But you rightly said, so Sood is a great example of how leadership kind of shines through in a very different situation. And I'm sure there are many more leaders existing within our own organizations in their own small spaces who display these or more traits.
Yes, yes. Okay, so Rahul, are you there? Ramdas, Clay. What is the name of Clay? I don't know.
He's on mute. He's on mute.
Hey, check. Avinash is there. Avinash Dixit.
Let me check.
Avinash is not there.
He was there actually.
Avinash is not there.
No, he's not there.
So 1st June, on 8th June, we are with the 10% of staffing in the office, right? My office is not even 2%. Today I went to office for 2 hours. I came back. Not even 2%.
Okay, let's get Amit Sarin. Amit Sarin, Dharmendra Negi. They are known to us, so you know we can take exam. We can take them without permission actually. Amit, are you there? Dharmendra, are you there?
One part of leadership is UDA. UDA.
Yeah.
General Huda, yeah.
So, no, not that UDA. There is a format called UDA. Observe, orient, design,
Okay,
and act.
all right.
Okay, guys, very interesting. One participant posted his meeting started. Ibukun, yes, meeting started, but it's ended now. So I think you are from Nigeria. RK, can you get him inside? Get him or get her inside. IBUKUN.
Let me see.
Guys, again, I'm announcing we still have 57 in case you're looking for SHRM discount, 29, 38. I can arrange a good discount. And for bulk, even better discount, please send me a mail. You can call me anytime. Tomorrow, there is a Grey Sales World HRD Congress. You got the link. Then day after tomorrow, there is a ETHR World. Again, it's complimentary. SHRM is paid conference. 5,000 to 6,000 is the amount, and 11,000 is the maximum. 11,000 you can attend 2 days, 4 session. In 5,000 you can attend 1 session.
I think Marshall is also there in SHRM, I think, right?
Marshall, yeah, Marshall is there, yeah. Okay, are you able to get that person?
I think Ibukun has left.
Okay, he's left. Okay, so sad. I mean, this time zone is always, kind of thing. People not able.
So Negi is here, right?
Hey, Negi, how are you? Negi is from aviation industries.
Aviation industry. Need to throw some light on that.
Negi logged out here. What did you ask him?
No, he is here. He is here. Like.
So there is a joke, the future of work, was saying that, which car? Flying car will be there. And today aeroplane not flying actually. Electric car, flying car, flying car will be